Thank you to those people in the room who've joined us at the Ledger Center and to everyone watching on Zoom. We really appreciate your coming this evening to our program. Welcome to a program with Lieutenant Colonel Eyal Dror, presented by the Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation in partnership with Canadians for Israel's Legal Rights. I'm Andrea Spindle, Executive Director of CAEF. We thank the Ledger Center for not only providing this lovely venue, but for being a sponsor and for actually sponsoring many of our programs. We're most appreciative. Other sponsors that have helped promote tonight's event include the Canadian Institute for Jewish Research, Club Z, Students Supporting Israel, Hasbara Fellowships Canada, Stand With Us Canada, Karut Canada, Beth Tikva Synagogue, features in my face here, the Matthias Project, Muslims Facing Tomorrow, Israel Activist Calendar, J Teach, Americans for a Safe Israel, Adath Israel Synagogue, the Lawfare Project, One Israel Fund, End Jew Hatred Canada, the Toronto Zionist Council, and the Israel Defense and Security Forum. This large collaboration allows us to create a great range of programs and reach a very wide, diverse audience. We have people from all across North America listening now. And it signifies the importance of Jewish solidarity in addressing issues today, especially anti-Semitism. And at this point, I have to make a short commercial announcement. We have a collaborative in Toronto that is planning a conference for which I have a poster here. The conference is called Stronger Together, Fighting to End Jew Hatred. And this conference takes place September the 10th at the Bayet in Toronto. Actually, it's located in Vaughan. And we urge everybody within driving distance to register to attend the conference. It is September 10th, but we'd like to see a strong turnout for this event. We already have confirmed several very important speakers. One is Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, another is Hannah Alper, a young social media influencer. And there will be workshops for all ages, and it's greatly focused on what's going on in the school system, anti-Semitism within our public school system. And the other little commercial announcement is that in promoting our Stronger Together event, we are hosting a number of individual programs. On April 2nd, David Bernstein will be speaking at Beth Tikva Synagogue, and it's also a collaborative event. He is the author of a book called Woke Anti-Semitism, How Progressive Ideology Harms the Jews. It's a very recent book. He has a long background working in Jewish organizations. I think you'll find his talk quite stimulating, and you can register for that event online at CAEF or any of the sponsor organizations. CAEF is a registered charitable organization, and we welcome your support financially, morally, and as volunteers. So if you'd like to make a donation to support our programs, you can do so at the registration desk when you leave, or you can go online at caef.ca. Tonight's program is entitled Israel, the Good Neighbor, Not an Apartheid State. I'm pretty sure that all of you who registered today are aware that Israel has never been an apartheid state. But you may not know that the Palestinian Authority runs its areas of control in Judea and Samaria as an apartheid enclave. The question we should ask is, why has there been over 17 years of anti-Israel apartheid weeks on campuses across North America when there is no apartheid in Israel, but Gaza and the disputed territories are Judenfree? We can thank the organization Students Supporting Israel, which brought Lieutenant Colonel Dror to Canada, for their courage and forthrightness in calling out the apartheid policies and practices under the two terror organizations, Hamas and the PA. SSI initiated Palestinian Apartheid Week on US campuses and possibly will do the same in the future in Canada. And I just want to mention as an interesting aside, they brought Lieutenant Colonel Dror to Toronto to speak today, and some of you may have noticed, if you see social media, that there was quickly a rash of messages on social media to protest his presence. And the young woman who's the president of this new SSI chapter was quite disturbed about what was happening. And wasn't quite sure how she could organize the event because of the protest she called campus security at the Metropolitan Toronto University, formerly Ryerson. And they told her they couldn't provide security on short notice. Now, she had no reason to think she would need security before a few days ago. So when she saw protesters happening, she asked for it. They told her to postpone the event or cancel. I think that's, personally, I think that's outrageous and we should register complaints with the university. But what she did do was to look to other places to hold the venue, to other venues, to hold the program. And I know Hesperia Fellowships quickly offered their boardroom, but it's at Yonge and Eglinton and the students are downtown. So a few students did meet with our guest at his hotel, which was great. I wished we could have had more people show up. But what you'll find amusing is the protesters went to the original site that was booked and he wasn't there. So maybe lesson learned. We do need to be very thoughtfully organized, but I do think the university has an obligation not to cancel such an event. The anti-Israel protesters are truth deniers and Jew haters, and disingenuous in claiming that they are about peace and justice. Their lies and hatred are unacceptable and give fuel to the fire of anti-Semitism, which is quite contemptible. It's my extreme pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, who's always quelling the fire, speaking truth, and doing courageous humanitarian work on behalf of the state of Israel, which he dearly loves. Lieutenant Colonel Eyal Dror is the founder and commander of the Good Neighbor Project. He served in the IDF for 24 years, the majority of which was in coordinating units working with the Palestinian Arab population. In 2016, he established the Good Neighbor Project to provide management support to the humanitarian assistance the IDF was providing to Syrian civilians who were victims of the civil war in that country. Under his command, there were 700 humanitarian operations conducted on a hostile border controlled by terrorist organizations such as ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah. However, in collaboration with Christian and Muslim organizations, he helped to create a new and different reality for those at the border and to change the perspective of many Syrian citizens who had been educated or brainwashed to hate Israelis. As an example, I found on Twitter that one small Syrian child had drawn and posted a picture of the Israeli flag in his honor. Eyal Dror lives in Kibbutz Gedei Nechemah with his wife and 3 children. Given the Good Neighbor Project, the huge effort by Israeli aid organizations to go into any country that experiences a natural disaster or major conflict, how is it that so many international NGOs, local and regional entities, including churches, mosques, temples, media, and academia, vilify Israel and raise the outrageous claim that it is an apartheid state? How can and must we do more to change the narrative, to teach truth, and to overcome ignorance and hatred? I'm sure you will hear that from the living embodiment of doing good, Lieutenant Colonel Eyal Dror, who will speak to us now. And do hold your questions after his presentation. I'm sure he'll be happy to take a few questions.
السلام عليكم. بإذن الله بكرة تلين على إدلب. كل الشكر والتقدير والاحترام لكم جميعا. أتمنى لكم مزيدا من التقدم والازدهار. دامتم ودامت دولة القانون. لن ننساكم أبدا. We will never forget you. The message that I got from the person that his face is covered and I cannot expose his name from security reasons. The only thing I can say, he was a Syrian doctor. He is still, hopefully, a Syrian doctor. He was a colleague in which 3 years we saved together lives of thousands of human beings on the Israeli-Syrian border. He sent a message, like you can see, almost at midnight. It was in the end of July 2018. I saw the message when I got to my room at my headquarters after another night on the Israeli-Syrian border. It was like 2:30 a.m. And I realized that the biggest humanitarian operation led by the IDF ever. Some military experts will claim it's the biggest humanitarian operation led by any army in the history, came to its end. And we are speaking about Operation Good Neighbor. So good evening to you. Really excited to be here. As mentioned, my name is Eyal. I'm living in Israel, in the northern part of Israel. I had a very, very long journey to Toronto, and I'm really excited to be here. There isn't any jet lag, and all the tiredness immediately disappeared when I came to the stage. And I hope that we will have a very meaningful evening. I served my country as an IDF officer for 24 years. In a minute, I will explain a little bit about my service. I'm still serving, not as an active officer, but as a reservist one. As probably most of you know, when you are reaching 18 in Israel, you are going to serve 3 years. Some will become officers and they will serve 1 more year. And some, like myself, will dedicate their life to our country. So I did it from the year of 95 until 2019. I retired. I still serving my country, as mentioned, as a reservist officer at the Bashan division. This is the sign of my unit. This is the unit that's protecting the Israeli-Syrian border even today. About our current challenges. Since the day I retired, my life is divided for 3. The first, spending time, catching time with the family. I don't know how much you heard about Israeli officers, but most of the time we won't be at home, not at holidays, not on vacations, weekends, birthday parties, anniversary celebration, whatever. We will be outside on the border protecting our country. So today I'm trying to catch time with them. I'm writing my PhD at the University of Haifa, and I just completed writing a book about my experience in the Golan Heights. It will be published in Hebrew in 2 months and hopefully until the end of the year in English. And in the rest of my time, I'm meeting people and share with them some facts, some truth about the state of Israel, in Israel and outside of Israel. Just a minute about my military service. So most of my career was in the coordination position with the Palestinians. During my military service, I served in places that you may have heard about them on news. Places like Gaza, Hebron, Bethlehem, basically all over Judea and Samaria. I wasn't a combat warrior. I was a coordinator. I dedicate my life to coordinate with the Palestinians. I met thousands of Palestinians, from ministers, businessmen, security people, respectable people, most of civilians, simply civilians. And in the last 3 years of my service, I was honored and privileged to establish Operation Good Neighbor, which will be the topic of our conversation. I will skip the maps because I hope that most of you are familiar with Israel. And I will tell you that if I will have just 1 minute to try to explain the meaning of Operation Good Neighbor, probably I will use this slide. And I will try to tell you that Operation Good Neighbor, it means making the impossible possible. Why? So I know that at least one person here knows to read Arabic, but I suppose that most of you do not. I will help you. It is written here in Arabic, Shukran Israel ala al-Musa'ada wal-Hub. Thank you, Israel, for the help and love. 13 years ago, nobody in Israel or in Syria thought it could be a possibility that a Syrian boy will be treated in Israel, will enter Israel. His life will be rescued by the Israeli soldiers. He will be hospitalized in one of the Israeli hospitals. His life will be saved by Israeli medical team. Pay attention, I will say it a couple of times during my conversation. I did not say about his life will be saved by Jewish medical team, about Israeli medical team, and I will explain why I insist to say Israeli medical team. And before we will go back home to his family, he will find a way to say thank you, Israel. So Operation Good Neighbor, in my opinion, is making the impossible possible. Let's do a short introduction why Israel did what we did. Now, it's not an history lesson, and I think that today anyone can search a little bit, and I think that people, humans, should know what happened in Syria. However, it didn't start in Syria. I'm speaking about a phenomena called the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring shaped the Middle East, and it will continue to impact the Middle East, in my opinion, at least in the next 20 years. It was a unique phenomena because not like in Canada, not like in the US, UK, Germany, and Israel, that we were born and raised with the right to speak and the right to demonstrate against our government. If you are living in the Middle East, not in Israel, and you will do so, probably you will be arrested. Probably you will be executed. I don't know how many of you are aware of what happened in Iran in the last month. The Arab Spring was a unique phenomenon because the people of the Arab countries decided to protest against their dictators. And in some places they succeeded. Names like Hosni Mubarak, president of Egypt, Muammar Gaddafi, for people living in the Middle East, well-known, very famous people, very famous leaders, has been changed by their people. In Syria, in March 2011, demonstrations started. By the way, it wasn't far away from the Israeli border, 40 kilometers from the border. However, this is at least one thing that Israel didn't accuse of, that we caused the Arab Spring, which is very surprising in the Middle East because all the bad things is happening due to Israel. So at least here, we didn't take any guilt. It started as demonstration. However, the Syrian regime, because they are belonging to the minorities in Syria, controlling the Sunnis, which are the majority, understood that if the demonstration will continue, probably he will lose his chair. And what happened because of it is a human catastrophe. You don't have to be a Syrian, you don't have to be a Muslim in order to understand that the Syrian civil war, it's a human catastrophe. A catastrophe that unfortunately the world didn't speak much about it. I'm speaking about 1 million people who lost their lives. 6 million become refugees. A lot of them still living in severe terms in countries like Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon, and the country is totally destroyed, or big parts of it destroyed. Even today, experts will claim that it will take them hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild it. I claim, and this is just my opinion, that Syria that we saw until 2010, I do not believe that it will be back Syria, but it was happened on Syria. How it is connected to Israel, and why should Israel be involved? So let me take you, please, to the Israeli-Syrian border. As probably you know, our last war with Syria was in the 73, a strategic surprise, the Yom Kippurim War. Syrian army surprised Israel, attacked us, and he was on his way to conquer the Golan Heights. The braveness of our soldiers, the mercy of God, and some miracles led us to stop the Syrian army and to defeat them. And from that day, the border was quiet. As a military officer, I will tell you that 100 kilometers of border that as IDF, we don't have to put much resources, it's very important. Why? Because, as you know, Israel have a lot of challenges, other challenges on the Lebanese border, on Gaza, Judea and Samaria. So for us, it was like a peaceful area. However, it wasn't peaceful. Yes, it wasn't any terror attacks going out from that border. However, the Syrian regime during the years continue to educate his people to hate Israel. Is anyone here has been visit Israel? Most of you. Is anyone visit the Golan Heights? Right. So I'm sure that if you visit the Golan Heights, you climb the highest mountain, one of the highest mountains, not Mount Hermon, Mount Bental. There is a coffee shop there, and you had an observation through Syria. You can have seen a city that has been destroyed. When I asked some of my Syrian colleagues why their government didn't rebuild it during the years after the war, so for their explanation, it was that because this was our way to convince our people that you are the enemy, to show them what Israel caused. The Syrian civil war changed something on that border. We met new friends. Cynically, I said friends. Organization like Al-Qaeda, organization like ISIS and Hezbollah. Now, I will not go and tell you what is the difference between Al-Qaeda and ISIS and between those two, Hezbollah. Some Shiites, some Sunnis. There are enemies in between. I will just say that if there is something that makes them in common, is the hate to Israel. And Israel found them on our border. However, on the other side of the fence, something else happened. Approximately 250,000 human beings, 250,000 people, lost their belongings. People were living, you can see by those pictures. Now, please do not ask me how did I get it. You can understand that getting pictures from Syria, an enemy country, is not something that they will use their phones and send it to me by Gmail. But I got it, and it tells the story. Stories of people that their homes has been destroyed by their own government, and they were living in a tent. In the wintertime, in the Golan Heights, it's freezing, it's snowing. People had to live in tents without heaters. People send the children to schools that were looking like that. And if you need an immediate treatment, you have been treated in this emergency room. Try, please, to find any electricity. I promise you will not find, but let's leave the pictures outside. Let's talk about meetings. In one of my first meetings with a Syrian lady, it was like 4 a.m. in the morning. Most of our operation happened in the middle of the night from security reason. There is the enemy. The Syrians are afraid. We, concerning to our lives, the night is our good friend. We have our night vision, etc., so we can protect ourselves in a better way. We have more advantage than the enemy has on daylight. So this lady entered 4 a.m. in the morning on the southern part of the Golan Heights, which you can understand is not much populated. After an hour and a half, I asked her what became a very silly question. I asked her, so tell me, how is Israel? Why a silly question? Because a person that was in Israel for 1.5 hours and saw nothing, because it's literally in the middle of nowhere, how can he judge Israel? And her answer surprised me because she told me, you have a wonderful country. Immediately, I told her, stop lying, please. Now, why? I don't need that a Syrian lady or any one of you will convince me that I'm living in a wonderful country. I know it. I believe it. However, I asked her how you can judge and how you can tell me that we have a wonderful country. You didn't see nothing. I didn't take you to the bars of Tel Aviv or I don't know, to see the Western Wall in Jerusalem. She told me, listen carefully. When I first entered the border, my back was to Syria. My face was to Israel. I saw, not far away from me, some lights. What she saw, it was a small community, a Jewish community that we have there. Not more, if I will exaggerate, 150 homes. But of course, it was enlightening. And she told me that in my village, we don't have any electricity. And then she told me, I entered the toilet, the restroom. I flashed the water. I opened the tap, I had hot and cold water. You have a wonderful country. I think that for me, it was the first time to realize, to appreciate what we have, to realize how bad their lives were. So from one hand, we have Syrian people living in an enemy country, people that lost all of their belongings. On the other side, people that hate us, that learn that we are the enemy. This was what they have heard for years. And in 2013, this is when our story began. On one night, that after a couple of meetings on the border, after Israelis sent some water bottle and some first aid for Syrians that were wounded coming closer to the border, on one night, 7 Syrians decided to arrive at the border. By the way, from their point of view, taking a huge risk to their lives. Anyone that will come closer to the Israeli border from Syria, even today, especially at night, immediately, from our point of view, is an enemy. Nobody from the Syrians have to find anything next to the border. By the way, these rules are very familiar also to the Syrians. Our soldiers saw them moving, coming towards the border. They had to do what they had to do from security, to protect themselves, to run the protocols that will make them secure. However, they understood that those people are not terrorists. They understood they are wounded and they are asking for aid. When we first asked them, aren't you afraid to arrive to the border, to the Israelis? They said, we already said goodbye to our families. We knew that this is a mission that we are not going back. However, it will be a quicker death. We are wounded. We cannot go to Damascus to be treated by the Syrian army. They will be executed us in a minute. So we put our life and we took a risk, chance. The Israeli soldiers didn't shoot them, of course. The Israeli soldiers decided at that time to open the border. I must say, it wasn't a government decision at that time. Opening a border to an enemy country, it's not something that a commander of a division can do. This is not its mandate. However, he decided to do so. He understood that we cannot stand on the other side of the fence, see people dying, people that we can help them. We are not speaking about Aleppo, 500 kilometers from the border. We are speaking about people living 1 kilometer from us. The border was open for the first time. Those Syrians entered Israel and their life was saved by the Israeli medical team. I just want to clarify why I'm speaking about the Israeli medical team. If you will take a plane to Israel now, and you will take a car and drive to Sfat, a very ancient Jewish city, and you will go to the hospital in this Jewish city, you will find that the common language is Arabic, not Hebrew. Why? Especially in the northern part of Israel, a lot of communities of minorities are living, speaking Arabic, from the Muslim to the Arab Christian to Rus, Sharkas, Badus. For the Syrians, it was a huge surprise. Knowing that they can speak freely, they can pray, seeing that in Israel, the minorities have rights and they are the majority in their country, they have no rights. Those Syrians came back to Syria after their life has been saved. And since then, every night looks like that. Israeli soldiers going to the fence, saving Syrian life. The Syrian regime immediately claimed that Israel is helping Al-Qaeda. He sent his foreign minister to speech in the UN that Israel is helping terrorists. I want to show you one of them. Take a look at the boy here. A fine terrorist. A 14 years old boy, one of my horrible nights. He came burned almost to death. Half of his family lost his life when the Syrian regime just decided to bomb his home. He came with his twin brother. We had to call a military helicopter in order to evacuate him to Tel Aviv hospital because the hospital in the northern part couldn't handle this kind of injuries. Some of those terrorists were women that having birth and something became complicated. If they will not get an immediate aid, they will probably die. Some of them were teenagers that were involved in car accidents and were bleeding to death. Anyone that needed a life-saving, some of them, by the way, was people that got bitten by snakes. Any kind of life-saving treatment Israel provided, and 3,500 Syrians were treated by the Israeli medical doctors. Their life has been saved, and something has been changed in the atmosphere of the Syrians and the Israelis. Of course, very quickly it became an Israeli policy. It wasn't just a decision of a commander. Prime Minister of Israel decided that Israel will help Syrians. We thought that there is two advantages from our point of view. First of all, as Jews, we cannot see people dying on the other side. And we also thought that there is a unique opportunity to make the Syrians learn who we are, that let them to understand that maybe we are not the people that they heard stories about us, and then just we are not going to convince you in anything, but go back to your country and then speak about Israel. Think for yourself who are the Israelis. I will say that we also thought that if the people on the other side will hate us less, shouldn't I say respect us, it also can minimize terror going from our border. I'll just remind you that I'm an IDF soldier, the Israeli Defense Forces, and my mission, first of all, is to protect my people. And if by this mission, I can win the both, helping Syrians and protecting my people, let's do it. In 2016, the IDF decided that we can do more. The Syrians were asking for more. And we created what we called Operation Good Neighbor. I was chosen to run this project to build a unit. I will just mention that at those times, 2015, 2016, Israel shut down units, parachute units, tanks units, from all kinds of budget reasons. We were the only unit that was open at that time. The IDF thought that it's so important that we will put research in this project. And I was called to run this project. I want to share some experience. And I will start from the mission. We are soldiers. We are working by missions. My mission was to think 24/7 about my enemies. This is what my commanders told me. I will rephrase it. To think 24/7 about human beings, civilians, innocent human beings living in an enemy country. Syria is still an enemy country. However, the people there, they shouldn't pay the price. Let's go to one of the nights. And I want to share to you the most emotional project that I was privileged to run inside Operation Good Neighbor. You can see how it looks like at night. This is, of course, a picture from our night vision. This is why it's green. And you can see like the circle. This is how you see it on night. We are going to the border. Summer, winter, fog, rain, snow. We are moving. Nothing will stop us. And we are going to have a very interesting interaction. We are going to meet 25 Syrian children accompanied with their mothers. Those Syrian children do not suffer or they are not going to die. It's not a life-saving treatment. Those Syrian children suffering from chronic illnesses, from diabetes to eye problems, orthopedic problems, such as illnesses that in the modern world, an expert doctor can improve your life and make him also almost normal. In Syria, it's not existing. So we are going to the fence, the border has been open, and we can meet the Syrian lady and a son. When I'm speaking about Operation Neighbour, it was emotional, it was important. However, it was the most risky mission I did in my life. If my wife was between the crowd, I would have probably told you that my soldiers were going to the fence while I was drinking coffee at my office. But she's not here, she's sleeping now in Israel. So we were leading our soldiers. I served in Gaza. My unit has been bombed every day by the rockets of Hamas. Snipers in Hebron shoot on me. Nothing was compared to this mission. Why? Because it's not a classified operation. And you don't have any intel on the other side. What we do know is the enemy is not stupid. Al-Qaeda and ISIS knows who we are, knows where exactly we are going to operate. There is just limited spots on the border that we can operate. The enemy can see us. We cannot surprise them by tactics because it's something that anyone can understand that, okay, we will put an ambush and we will wait for 48 hours, they will arrive because it happened every night. By the way, we understood that Al-Qaeda will not hesitate to take advantage on these women in order to hit us. They are not giving any other second thoughts about the life of others if they will be able to hit us. So going there was very tense. The adrenaline was high and you were willing for a combat anytime. We did it 700 times. Just think, as a commander of a unit, how many times you are not sleeping at night, how many times you are taking care. By the way, not always I could lead my soldiers. Sometimes we ran 3 operations in the same night. So we need someone that will stay and will coordinate with all the forces. And with the Syrians, I can tell you that this was my worst nights. Why? Because I wasn't leading my soldiers there, my deputy, my other officers, but it's something that just a commander can understand the feeling that you're sending your soldiers without knowing whether they will come back again. On the other side, it was so emotional. Why? Because nothing in the world prepared me to the minute that I will meet Syrians in the middle of the night when it was rainy, and I will see a 4-year-old boy crossing the border barefoot and his legs is bleeding. It's tearing the heart. It's something unacceptable. Nothing prepared to see this. And the boy is walking with his mom, and the road is not so clear, so he's falling down, and she grabbed him up, and he continued to walk, falling again and again, and he's not crying. And when I asked the mother, is the boy okay? She tells me, yes, he's okay. And I asked her, so can I ask you why he's not crying? He just fell now. And she told me he's not crying because he knows that nobody cares. Can you accept that the 9 and 8 years old boy is not crying because nobody cares? We took him to Israel by the buses, and in the hospital, we could have met the Syrians. To hear the stories, we had the time with them to spend. When I told you before, making the impossible possible, take a look at this boy with the Nike shirt, the yellow one. Making the impossible possible, because 13 years ago, nobody thought that it will be a possibility that an IDF officer with his uniform, his weapon, his ranks, will run after a Syrian boy, we will shout each other in Arabic. And this is because we're playing football. And then I asked him, aren't you afraid? And he was looking at me and told me, why should I? You're an Israeli officer, you're not a Syrian one. If there is something I didn't tell you about my bio, I'm belonging to a family that dedicated years to the IDF. My father's cousin, he was a lieutenant colonel, a commander of a battalion. In the Yom Kippurim War in 73, he lost his life on Mount Hermon, on the Golan Heights, shot by the Syrians. 40 years later, his family member playing football with a Syrian boy that maybe, just maybe, his relatives shot my father's cousin. For us, it was amazing. It was emotional. And it was tragic because when I spoke with this little boy, I asked him a very simple question. When you will be adult, what do you want to do in your life? And it wasn't any response. Now, believe me, I know to speak Arabic. I knew that he understood me. I asked him again, and it wasn't any answer. You know, I will share with you when I'm speaking with my older daughter, she's 12, her name is Lihi. When I asked her, Lihi, what do you want to do when you will be adult? So she told me, I will be a famous dancer. I know because I driving her 4 times a week to this dancers class. And then when I asked, okay, and if you will not be so sure, I will be a doctor, a very famous one. So I said, okay, but you know, in order to be a doctor, you should learn English. And I said, sir, no, that I will not be. I will be probably an IDF officer. And then my wife jumped in, no, you're not going to spend so many years in the IDF. Well, Michal, my wife, and myself, who will negotiate this issue about Lihi being an officer. She will be. But she doesn't have any other choice. But she has the right to choose. When I asked this boy for the 3rd time, when you will be adult, what do you want to do with your life? Finally, I got the answer. And I was almost sorry I asked him because he told me I will not be an adult. I will die in a year or 2. This is what's going on with Syrian children. When I told you that it was one of the most amazing missions, because as soldiers talk to me with missions, this was the mission, to bring them to the expert doctors. This was when they find how good are the Israelis, because all those secondhand shoes, this is the team of the hospitals collect in order that they will not go back home. And this is why it was so emotional. Because when we saw those pictures, we understood that we are doing the right thing to do as human beings, without politics involved, without the borders between Jewish people and Muslims, Israelis, Syrians. We used to be enemies. We are no longer enemies. You are living in an enemy country. Who cares? They're human beings. And we had the right and the opportunity to save them. 1,400 Syrian children were treated during that specific project. Thank you. In the first days, by the way, they came from very close to the border. When the project continues, they arrive also from villages that were located 35 kilometers from the border. It was a success, but it was a success and we couldn't have done it by ourselves. The IDF, we are not the experts for humanitarian missions. We know how to do so. We have the greatest rescue team in the world, and we got very good medical team. However, humanitarian aid is a professional. We had to find people that will help us. We found NGOs, some of them Christians and Muslims. This Christian organization from the US, what they done, they built a field clinic, treated 8,000 Syrians. It was with volunteers, Americans and non-Americans, people that came closed the clinics for 3 weeks just to come to volunteer to help the people. But I think that what they have done also, and if there is something that I learned from this project, that saving life is important. I don't know how many of you had the privilege to save a person's life. In the Bible, you say that a person that saved a person's life, like saving the whole world. I can't count how many times my soldiers saved the world. But if we do learn something, that there is something that it is maybe even more important than saving life, and it is still giving hope to others, to people in need. My family ran away from Romania in the 40s from the Nazis. When I heard their stories, when I read the Holocaust survivor testimonies, I understand that what kept them alive there was hope. And I think that what we gave to the Syrians was also hope. Hope, by the way, is also can be represented by an ice cream to a girl that never ate one, or a boy that will hug a teddy bear, a toy that he will never have. 4,000 were treated, and the operation continues. You can see here another night on the border and all the equipment in which we built a maternity hospital. There is 1,000 Syrians that were born thanks to Israeli maternity hospital that was built inside one of the villages. I call it an Israeli, but well, it is not me that call it. The Syrians used to call it the Israeli hospital, Al-Mashfa al-Israeli, the Israeli hospital. There wasn't any Israeli presence in Syria, but all the equipment, maybe not the purple carpet, but all the devices were brought by Israel, by our NGOs. This was a collaboration with a Muslim organization. Basically, I think that it was one of the only times that in the history that Jews, Christians, and Muslims collaborate together, and especially to save Muslims under the command of a Jewish officer. I don't know how many times it happened in history. The operation continues and provided all kinds of basics, from clothes, and if you're speaking about coats. I saw that in Toronto it's very cold. The Golan Heights is also. I told you, living in a tent in a winter time, a coat is a lifesaver. 350 tons of coats, and we will speak about food. By the way, speaking about food, in order to communicate with a person that do not know your language, there is an opportunity. My soldiers didn't know a word in Arabic, the Syrian children did not know a word in Hebrew, and of course not in English. They were communicating. I think that in order to communicate with a person, first of all, you should learn and know his culture, his tradition, his values. When we brought them, like you can see here, when we brought them meat, it was especially delivered before the holidays. Why? Because we understand and we know that in the holidays, they're eating meat and cakes. So we provide them. It was like saying, we know who you are, we respect your tradition, we are with you in this game. Unfortunately, after 700 humanitarian operation, after 6 years, the operation shut down. We provided the Syrian equipment worth 400 million shekels. We risk our lives night by night. Ending this program wasn't an Israeli decision due to what happened in the Middle East, the uprising of Syria again, the assistance from Russia. They were conquering again the land, the Syrian regime. Aleppo, and then the area of Damascus. 2018 was the turn of the Golan Heights, the Syrian part of the Golan Heights. Heavy bombing, 6 weeks of heavy bombing. Israel treated 50,000 displaced people who ran away from the cities, setting them close to the border. So we provide them tents and other food. Their life has been saved. And our last operation, just 2 days before the area was completely conquered, was the rescue of the white helmets. If you will search about the white helmets, you will find that some of them is living also here in Canada. The white helmets were Syrian heroes. They were not connected to Israel in any way. The white helmets were the people that was literally jumping into the fire, saving life of their own people from the places that has been bombed by the regime. By the way, I know that there is a Netflix program under the name, The White Helmets. In the area that was close to the border, it was a couple of hundreds of them, and it was like an international operation. Our Prime Minister got requests from his colleagues to save them. Why? Because the world sponsors some of them. So a couple of days before the operation came to its end, we opened the border for 10 hours. I didn't mention that in average operation, because the huge danger took 30 to 45 minutes. Here, 10 hours, a whole night. We could have literally seen the clashes between the Syrian army and the rebels just below us, 200 meters. We were on a cliff and they were just below us, and we can see the bullets flying in the air. Over than 400 human beings were saved that night. They were crossed to Israel. For me, as a field commander, as a person that his job was to coordinate this very sensitive, very secret operation, because this was a secret one. It was amazing to see the Syrians coming to the fence, standing on their homeland in Syria, and they are gripping of fear, knowing that they were condemned to death, crossing to Israel, the country that they used to hate, and having a huge breath because they knew that their life has been saved. They are not in Israel. The international agreement was that we will save them, we will open the fence for them, and we will escort them to Jordan by the Israeli-Jordanian border. At Jordan, countries that support them were waiting for them and gave them their new identities. By the way, the day after they saved, they published in the website a letter that 400 and some of the people has been saved. They didn't mention the name Israel. However, I cannot blame them. They have people inside Syria. If they will admit that Israel saved them, it will go to the hands of Assad that will say, I told you, those are Israeli spies. So I'm not insulted that they didn't mention me. I know that all of them is grateful for Israel. So the operation came to its end, and people, well, asking me, was it worth it? It's a question. With your permission, give me 10 seconds, and I will try to provide the answer. I think, and for the people in the Zoom, I think that this is the answer. And I want to tell you last story for tonight. The story of a Syrian girl that suffered from severe diabetes, almost dying when we collect her from the border. She was hospitalized here for 6 months. And just before she went back home, she asked us how to do the flag of Israel. We explained her so you can see that it was a little mess for her to draw the Star of David, make her a little bit hard life. However, at the end of the day, she succeeded. She succeeded to draw the flag of my country. And I think that what is even more emotional is what is written here. On the left side, she wrote her name, Wiham, and she drew the sign of love. And on the right side of the page, she wrote another name. She wrote the name of Yaakov, the father of Jacob, but she didn't speak about Isaac. Abu Yaqub, ladies and gentlemen, was my Syrian name. This is how Syrian used to call me for years. So a Syrian young daughter, a Muslim, that drawing the flag of Israel dedicated to an IDF, a Jew officer that saved her life. This is the true meaning of Operation Good Neighbor. This is the meaning of making the impossible possible. I'm sure that we will not forget the state of Israel, like I'm sure that the white helmet will not forget us. 250,000 human beings will not forget us. And if you ask me why I believe so, there is an example here about making the impossible possible, because 13 years ago, nobody here thought that it can be a possibility that an Israeli will speak and his guest of honor will be a Syrian friend. And I mentioned to my friend Abud, which is sitting here, he came from Syria, and we are in touch in the last years. And for me, it was a great opportunity to meet him finally, face to face, and he was honored me with his arriving here. This is the meaning of making the impossible possible. If you ask me, how do I know that they are still respect us? Well, I didn't spoke about much what I'm doing in my reserve. It's classified, let's call it like that. In one sentence, my role is to know what is going on the other side. Today, there is a huge effort from the Iranian regime and the Hezbollah to try to hit us. They are trying to recruit Syrians. One of the reasons, not the biggest one, was the most important one, but one of the reasons that they are still denying and they do not want to collaborate with Hezbollah is because they still remember what Israel did for them. And if in any opportunity in the future, it will be some talks between Israel and Syria, I'm sure that what we have done will be a very good way to start. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us. We are going to have some time for a few questions. We only have one mic, I think. Am I correct? Yeah? Okay, so what I will do, I'll walk to the front. People can ask the question, then I'll hand it back to Eyal. I have a question to start while you get your thoughts together, and if you'd like, Rafi will bring the mic to you. Given that you've been through that experience and you've seen the possibilities with Syria, you also bordered with Lebanon, which has had its share of disasters. Has something similar happened with the Lebanese people? Have they come forward and sought help?
So with Lebanon, it's a little bit different. Lebanon, unfortunately, controlled today by a terrorist organization. Yes, there is like the Lebanese government, etc., but everybody that understands the situation in Lebanon knows that Hezbollah controlling the country, and Hezbollah is not willing to get any aid from Israel. It's against the propaganda, exactly like the Syrian regime didn't want to get any aid. In Lebanon, it was a catastrophe during the years, but in 2 years ago, in August 2020, it was a disaster, a huge explosion on the port of Lebanon. Israel from that time asked the Lebanese 4 times to provide aid, and they ignored it. I'm sure that if the circumstances would have been different, Israel will be the first country to help Lebanon.
It was because of that disaster, I wondered. Okay, does anyone on the floor like to ask a question?
Eyal, first of all, thank you very much for your service. It's heartwarming and gratifying to see this sort of initiative, and you can tell by how you convey it how much it means to you. I think it's very important that this sort of thing go on. I remember 25, 30 years ago, there was a segment on 60 Minutes, maybe you know about this, where it showed that an Israeli orchestra conductor had musicians that were Arab and Jew together, And this was a fantastic orchestra that showed tremendous cooperation between the peoples. If there's a war that I think Israel loses and needs to get better at, it's publicizing and giving voice to these sorts of initiatives. And I heard what you said about the ramifications to people who speak out and promote Israel on the other side, what can happen to their families. But the problem is that, you know, Andrea opened with the fact of the misinformation of Israel being an apartheid state. But these are the sorts of stories that help in the Golan and the diaspora be able to show who Israel really is. And I think that it's great for us to see this. There needs to be more people that are more made aware of this. So what are your thoughts in terms of why hasn't there been, we're as smart as Hamas and Hezbollah that are very, very good and fortunate at publicity and trying to make things look in their favor. Why hasn't this happened, and is there any impetus to do better?
So unfortunately, I totally agree with you. One explanation, we are better doers than speakers. I do believe that Israel should do more about that. I can tell you that in person, as a person that didn't like to interview, you know, I was a military person. It's not my role to have public speeches, etc. When I retired, and I understood how important it is, and coming here, leaving my family, after I told you that one of the most important things for me is to spend the time with the family, leave them for 9 days before Pesach, punishment that I will get from my wife because I left her alone with the cleaning. But for me, it's very important. So this is why I'm coming here and doing so. For a lot of other Israelis, it's important. So anyone is working on his field and trying to share. We should be more united, and it's the role of the government. Unfortunately, in Israel, in the last 10 years, from a lot of political reasons, the organization or the headquarters that should have been all of these actions is very split. This is a tragic because we are losing. 24 years of my life, I understood and I was trained that the enemy is the people that I saw in front of my eyes, and they're wearing uniforms like myself, or not uniforms because they're terrorists. When I retired and started to visit campuses, I understand that the enemy is not just there, it's outside. And without giving, I will not say, of course, giving the ammunition to the Jewish students because it's not politically correct, but without giving them the tools to know what is going on and to tell them stories like this and others about the facts, about what's really going on, we are losing the game. 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with one of the people of SSI that were visiting in Israel, the organization that flew me here, and she told me that you are the Israelis still concerned from the BDS. It's not a big issue. What we are concerning here in the US is that today Jewish teenagers supporting the BDS and not Israel. And I think that the problem is a problem of Israel. I will tell that I'm speaking about national security. I'm an officer. National security is your love and your support in us. I'm sure that you are with us. I don't know about your children. And again, this is just what I heard. Unfortunately, most of Israelis are not aware of these facts. This is our obligation to do more, and this is your obligation to do more together, because this is the only way that we will be able to win. There is plenty of doing. The only request, one understands, that the people that arrive here, please, what you heard today, share the message.
Can I take that? I'm going to just reiterate that a recording of this will be available and sent to everybody that has been here today and everybody that's registered. So we'll ask you to push it out to your friends. And a couple of comments here online. Someone asked who started calling Israel an apartheid state, and I have no idea. The next comment is, and I don't know, I didn't know this, that Jimmy Carter gave his presidential impromptu to Israel apartheid in describing Israel. That I did not know. This has caused enormous damage. Why do you think people believe it? I mean, despite the fact that Israel might not do great PR, there's absolutely zero evidence that anything like this takes place, and everybody can Google Israel every day. So why does the apartheid message persist?
It's very easy. There was a president called Yasser Arafat, the president of the Palestinians. What he teaches the world that if you will continue to share lies, one day someone will believe you. The same goes with the apartheid. It's very easy to make the people confused. There is the separation wall, etc. And then when I ask them, okay, let's talk about this apartheid wall, the separation wall, etc. Israel conquered those areas from 67. When it was built, or it's 68, it was built in 2002, when Palestinian Authority has been established, and the war was to create government. But unfortunately, a lot of people, especially today when everything is available on social media, however, everybody has so much knowledge, they are not willing to explore. So one fool through the word apartheid, and it runs away. It helps people because, like we were discussing, if we support the rights of the LGBTQ, and if we will support the life of minorities, the rights of minorities, so automatically we should be with the rights of the Palestinians, and the rights of the Palestinians make Israel the bad people. Go and learn the facts, not the narratives.
Another question.
I just want to add insult to injury here. You asked about the apartheid. There's an organization in Israel called CILR. In 2022, they reached an agreement in CILR in Israel that the bar has been met to call Israel an apartheid state. This is an Israeli organization funded by NGOs.
New Israel Fund.
Meets say no one.
All the cover for the wonderful work
Thank you.
that you've done. And I hope that there will be goodwill in the future talks with Syria. But as my husband stated in this question, you're fighting an ideology with humanitarian action. So nothing that Israel does, none of its good deeds really does anything to abate the violence against and the hatred of Israel and Jews in the diaspora. It behooves, well, of course, if anyone needs the protection of the IDF, it's the Israelis. So what I don't understand, and I hope you can explain, is how so many members of the IDF and the reservists are now saying that they wouldn't follow the orders of the elected government. I think that's in reference to the current situation in Israel.
Which, by the way, has been postponed by the government.
So first of all, I think that those soldiers didn't say that if it will be a war, they will not obey. And there is a huge difference. You should understand what they said. They said, first of all, that now they are freezing the service. By the way, I will just mention that they are volunteering for service. In any time they can stop services, like myself, for example. Nobody forced me to serve. I do it because I do believe that I can do it. In any day, I can ask my commanders to quit the IDF. I finished my obligation for the state of Israel. In a day of war, all of them will arrive. We know that for sure. Now, it is your question connected to the situation of what is going on in Israel. I'm not sure that I'm the right person to answer because we have here a huge discussion about that. I do believe that what happened in Israel in the last month has concern us, the Israelis, concern the Jews outside Israel. I do believe that when the story will be ended, we will become stronger country that we were. And it based, again, in order to understand what is going on now, you should understand exactly the politics that's going on in Israel in the last years and all the sides. I don't think that it's the appropriate time. I do believe that Israeli officers, pilots, and all of those were swearing to serve a democracy country. And I hope that, I know that we're a democracy. By the way, the demonstration that we had during the last month show everyone that this is a democracy, and I'm sure that we will stay a democracy. We don't have any other way. And I will just, it's not that the Iranian or Hezbollah seeing me now, but I can, if I can give them a hint or a tip, don't mess with us.
Okay. We'll only have time for maybe one more question from the floor, but while we're passing the mic, I'll give you time to think about this. Given that the story of your support for Syrians, your rescue of Syrians, is now well established, can you comment as to whether overseas Syrians in the diaspora are aware of it and supportive of Israel?
I think that you can ask Abu, and maybe he will have better answer than myself. I will just say that I read a year and a half ago a story on Facebook published by an Israeli. He was in Stockholm, Sweden, a country and a city that is not known by its goodwill to Israelis. And he was telling a story, by the way, after I read it, I achieved his phone number and I called him. And he promised me that it was like that. And he's telling that he was eating his meal alone. He came from business travel, so he was eating alone. And then the waitress came, and when he gave the credit card, she understood that he's from Israel. So she dropped it and started crying and running for the kitchen. And he said, okay, I'm an Israeli, I'm a Jew, I'm in Stockholm. Now she's a Muslim. I understand that she's a Muslim. Now she's coming out from the kitchen and they're going to beat me to death. And he was like, I was ready to run away for my life. And then she's going out with her sister. And they were two crying, and they told him that, just for your knowledge, a couple of years ago, we were Syrian residents, and our mom was hospitalized in Israel. She was almost dying. Israel saved her life. We succeeded to escape in Turkey, and now we're refugees in Sweden. And we would just want to say thank you. And they were insistent to have a phone call with the mother that was greeting them. So this is one story that I know that happened. I'm sure that some Syrians, more than before 2010, appreciate Israel. Unfortunately, there is still a lot of that do not know those facts, but some of them really, really know.
Thank you very much. You're to be commended for the job you're doing. You're to be commended for the responsibility you undertook. And by no means is what I'm saying a criticism of what you're doing, quite the opposite. In fact, my problem is I'm impatient. I'm looking at the university today. I'm looking at everything that's happening in North America. We're actually losing the battle. So when I see you talking about the humanitarian help, when you're fighting an ideology, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, how long is this going to take? Is there not a better way? As an example, is there not a way that we can change the education system with the Palestinians? You know, when they're in kindergarten and they're being taught to kill Jews, whatever. You know, some of the things where the ideology basically, and you know, with all of the people that you're talking to today, they will go back home and talk to their mullahs And by the time they get to be 21, guess what? They'll probably hate us. So I think what you're doing is absolutely wonderful, but as I said, is there not a faster way, a better way? And we're losing. By the way, just for your information, there's a very famous economist by the name of Thomas Sowell. He was asked, how do you stop anti-Semitism? You know what his answer was?
Yeah.
Israel has to lose.
Right.
Oh, he's not Jew. No, he's black.
Yeah, Thomas Sowell.
Maybe Jewish too.
He's actually pro-Israel.
So unfortunately, from my experience, I don't see any other way to impact the education of Palestinians or Lebanese or Syrians. Why? Because the government itself, this is the organization that makes this education, and they are hating us from their own propaganda. I will do say that today, when the word becomes viral and social media, there is a lot of times that I can see people from Gaza, people from Lebanon criticize themselves and speaking about Israel. This is just the minorities, but it's happened. If you ask me what should we continue to do in Israel, trust the IDF. This is why I'm still serving my country, because we need the IDF strong, and we need that our allies continue to support us. This is the only way for us to survive.
Thank you. I think that we're going to draw the evening to a close with great thanks again to all of you who participated and attended both by Zoom or in person. And if you'd like to support the programs that we're engaged in, please do donate to CAEF. And in answer to the last gentleman's question, we agree that we're losing the propaganda war. So one of the activities that CAEF is very much engaged in, and you can all help, is telling the Canadian government to stop funding UNRWA, which is the organization which delivers education to 500,000 Palestinian Arab children, teaching them that they should hate, well, that Israel doesn't exist and the Jews are evil and it's okay to hate us and even commit violence and terrorism against Jews. So we have a job here to do. We don't have to be in Israel. We have to tell the Canadian government to withhold funding because it is funding terrorism. Thank you, Eyal, for a fantastic program, for all you do, for your commitment, love, and passion. We support you. We support the idea. We wish you well in your travels, and I hope you continue to build friendships across the North American continent as you travel. Thanks, everyone, again. Good night.